We're talking about the book Dark Future. It is the new book that I wrote with Justin Haskins, and it is what is coming, and what is coming through technology and the idea of superiority of the intellectual. There are going to be, in their own words, millions of useless people without any power with military, without any political or economic value. They are a useless class. That doesn't usually work out well. And when people start using the same words that have been used before or describe the things that have been used before, you should take them seriously. I'm trying to remind you of some of the things that have been said in the past so you recognize them when you hear them again, and you will see them in Dark Future. George Bernard Shaw said, "We should find ourselves committed to killing a great many people whom we now leave living, and to leave living a great many people who we at present kill. We should have to get rid of all the ideas about capital punishment. A part of eugenic politics would finally land us in an extensive use of a lethal chamber. A great many people would have to be put out of existence simply because it wastes other people's time to look after them. The moment we face it, frankly, we are driven to the conclusion that the community has a right to put a price on the right to live in it. If people are fit to live, let them live under decent human conditions. If they're not fit to live, kill them in a decent human way. It's a wonder that some of us are driven to prescribe the lethal chamber as a solution for the hard cases, which are at present made the excuse for dragging all other cases down to their level. And the only solution that will create a sense of full social responsibility in modern populations." He's the guy who came up with the idea of a gas chamber. Now, I want to take you to one other person, and then we're going to jump to today. And I want you to listen to this carefully, because many people will deem this as a prediction come true by the futurist H.G. Wells in the 1930s and 40s. I contend it is a warning to us today as well. H.G. Wells, he said, "The dominant men of a new time will find in themselves," it must be remembered, I'm not speaking of man as whole, "a desire, a passion almost, to create and organize, to put in order, to get the maximum result from certain possibilities." Now think of this. Why are we driving to this new technological world? Because it will put things in order, things that are not understood, and the world is getting so complex that it's getting confusing. So we need AI to put things in order in a cold and an efficient way. He says these men will be artists in reality, with a passion for simplicity and directness and an impatience of confusion and inefficiency. Have we seen that impatience with anyone else? Have we seen impatience with, for instance, our Constitution, which intentionally slows things down? We have to move faster. We need something more efficient. This is a dusty document of the past. He says it's manifest that a reconstructed ethical system will give very different values from those given by the existing system. Are we having a change in values? Has anyone noticed that? The ethical system of these men of the new republic, the ethical system which will dominate the world state. Wait a minute. So now we're talking about a prediction of an ethical system being introduced that's different than the common ethical system that will dominate a world state. He said it will be shaped primarily to favor the procreation of what is fine and efficient and beautiful in humanity. Beautiful and strong bodies, clear and powerful minds, and a growing body of knowledge. And to check the procreation of the base, the servile types, the fear-driven and cowardly souls. all that is mean and ugly and bestial in the souls, bodies, and habits of men. To do the latter is to do the former. The two things are inseparable. In the new vision, death is no inexplicable horror anymore, no pointless terminal terror to the miseries of life. It's just simply an end of all pain, the pain of bitterness and failure, the merciful obliteration of the weak, the silly, and the pointless things. I'm reminded of Ray Kurzweil telling me death will end by 2030 because you'll just be downloaded. And what is death? Death is meaningless. No pointless terminal terror. For a multitude of contemptible and silly creatures, fear-driven and helpless and useless, unhappy or hatefully happy. Boy, I can think of a lot of headlines right now that would classify a lot of people as all of those things, who are just living their lives in the midst of squalid dishonor, feeble, ugly, inefficient, born of unrestrained lusts, and increasing and multiplying through sheer incontinence and stupidity. The men of the new republic will have little pity and less benevolence. The men of the new republic will not be squeamish either in facing or inflicting death, because they'll have a fuller sense of the possibilities of life than we possess now. They will have an ideal that will make killing worthwhile. The preeminent value of sexual questions in morality lies in the facts that lives, which will constitute the future, are involved. So in other words, the only thing that is moral about sex or immoral about sex is because you're creating a child. If that's not involved, we can disassociate this relationship from this issue. Then sexual questions become no more importance than the morality of one's deportment at chess or the general morality of outdoor games. The men of the new republic will rout out and illuminate urban rookeries, all places where the base drift to multiply. They will contrive a land legislation that will keep the black, the yellow, the mean white squatter on the move. Childbearing shall cease to be a hopeful speculation for the unemployed poor. This euthanasia of the weak and the sensual is possible on the principles that will probably animate the predominant classes of the new time. It will be permissible, and I have little or no doubt in the future it will be planned and achieved. I contend that could be almost the mission statement for the World Economic Forum's plan. There is in my new book, Dark Future, a new blueprint for society. And it's all about taking these just brilliant minds that know better than you and chart out a new blueprint for a new republic. And it's wonderful. And what they've done is, first, they have to get rid of all of our history. In an influential, this is on page 218 of Dark Future, in his influential series of essays titled Literature and Revolution, Trotsky wrote that under a collective approach to society, the human species, the coagulated Homo sapiens, will once more enter into a state of radical transformation, and in his own hands will become the object of the most complicated methods of artificial selection and psychophysical training. Trotsky further said this transformation, which is entirely in accord with evolution, will inevitably result in a completely new form of humanity, one that's greater than the present, shackled from the humanity living today, unshackled from the humanity living today. They talk about all of these new tactics. Common Core was one of them. this. The Common Core idea of a literate person in the 21st century differs fundamentally from the conception of a human person that inspires classical education, a more timeless and transcendent view of human nature. In the classical vision, a human person has a soul that needs to be nourished, and it needs to become enduringly good, true, beautiful, as expressed in civilized man's greatest achievements in literature and art and politics and science. Classical education also equips children with the time-tested intellectual tools to navigate the world. Common Core falls short in both respects, in building a solid foundation of cultural knowledge and in teaching practical skills. Instead, it serves up cumbersome process requirements wrapped in obscure jargon. Pullman further notes that Common Core kills stories. Listen to that. It kills stories for school children, in part by recommending that children read progressively less fiction and more informational text as they go through school. Pullman reports Common Core even suggests assigning sections of the U.S. Code and other technical documents that do nothing to help kids become well-rounded people. Common Core does mention elements of cultural knowledge that are central to classical education, but it mangles them. For instance, it is selectively quoting quotes of the Bill of Rights and then recommends blatantly biased secondary materials to interpret it as racist or a sexist document. The list for high school students on book reading includes The Bluest Eye, a Toni Morrison novel featuring graphic descriptions of pedophilia, incest, and child rape. Perhaps the most notable recent example of this strategy is the educational materials included in the New York Times' infamous 1619 Project, which are being used in thousands of schools across the United States, Washington, D.C., including Chicago and New York. Okay, so what is all of this for? You have to get our kids to stop thinking. You have to get them away from traditional values, traditional thinking of the way the world works. You need to, if you can, sterilize them at the same time, or make sure they're having sex with each other as the same gender, so that way they're not having children either. Then you have the new idea, the new blueprint introduced. That is what you will find in Dark Future. Part 2 of The Great Reset. You don't have to read The Great Reset to understand the second. It does help, but you don't have to. Dark Future. It is available wherever books are sold. You can get it now at glensnewbook.com. That's glensnewbook.com.